Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This video will be solely dedicated to Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I mentioned in my recent upload, my April reading wrap-up, that I started reading this book, but at the point of uploading I had not finished this book yet, so there was a whole lot that I could not yet know or talk about this book that I want to address in this video. So quick disclaimer right here, this video is going to contain spoilers, so if you don't want to know certain or like the entire plot line of this book, exit out right here. Okay, so there are a few of those key topics of the book I would like to talk about right here because I have a lot of questions, none of which are really being answered in the book, and I gotta talk about it with someone, and that someone is you. Okay, so first of all, I want to mention that the first half of the book and the second half is kind of really different, because in the first half not a lot really happens in the book, and that's also the point I was at when I was filming and uploading my last video. The first half of the book is basically just Klara, this artificial intelligence, living a kind of everyday life and learning about life and also making new experiences, learning about the kid she's taking care of, Josie. But in the second half of the book, a lot of new plot lines, a lot of new themes are being introduced in the story, and those I want to talk about right now. So the first theme of this book, which I thought was very interesting, is this whole idea of, can artificial intelligences, can robots, let's just call them that right now, have spirituality? Can they have religious beliefs? Because in this book, these artificial intelligences are being solar powered, so the sun is giving them their literal energy and nourishment, as Klara always calls it. But you can tell by the plot of this book that Klara really believes in the sun as an entity she also pleads to, and wanting that entity to help her kid Josie to get better, because Josie has a severe sickness, and so Klara is addressing that entity that she believes in to help her out. So that was a really interesting theme. Can artificial intelligences have religious beliefs? Can they? In this book they do. Okay, so then touching on this subject of Josie's sickness, which is a really big part of the plot line, first of all, this entire idea of being lifted, only in the second part of the book we realize that is the cause of Josie's sickness, and was also the cause of her sister's death, because this process of being lifted equals genetic engineering. We don't get any details of what it really includes, but apparently it is a procedure done on babies or children when they're really young, to in one way or another, I suppose, enhance them, make them better humans. We do not get any specifics, so don't mind my language here, but apparently it can have drastic side effects. Josie is being sick, her sister has already died because of this process, so that's also a very interesting subplot. I would love to have a little more information about this whole process of being lifted. Then touching on the plot line of Klara potentially continuing Josie in case Josie dies. Josie's parents are constructing, or they have someone construct an AI that physically resembles Josie, and in case Josie dies, they would want Klara to be transferred into the body of this other AI and to imitate Josie. That's why they really brought Klara into their lives, so that she could learn all about Josie's mannerisms and her personality, so that in case Josie dies, she could become, or as they always call it in the book, continue her. So that of course raises this question about, could a robot, an artificial intelligence, replace a human being? Is it possible? Could they learn the essence of a human, or is there more to the essence, the true personality of a human being that could never be imitated by a robot, by an artificial intelligence? Which of course touches on these subjects of, do we have a soul, or what is the human heart, metaphorically speaking? is there a certain like uniqueness to human beings in general, but then also to every single individual that could never be imitated by a robot? All of those questions are being raised, even though they become at some point like irrelevant to this particular story because Josie gets better. So this whole scenario of like Klara taking her place never plays out, not in this story at least. Then a bit like a few more words on the entire setting, the world this story takes place in. At first I was convinced that the story, even though it of course had to be somewhat futuristic, as in like it took place in a world where there are AIs, etc. But still I thought of it as a rather normal world, as in like it being rather similar to our 21st century world. But I think there are several hints in the later half of the book that the world this takes place in is actually more dystopian than one might think from the first half of the book. And there are like several hints as to that, or like at least I interpreted certain things as being hints towards a more dystopian society. First of all, Klara often references that apparently adults, they walk or they wear certain almost like uniforms, something that like something that Klara recognizes as somewhat of a status symbol. For example, when Josie's mother walks in, she describes her like jacket as being the jacket of like a high official or something like that. And that happens throughout the book at several occasions, that like Josie, Klara, she can basically identify the status of a person by what they're wearing. So I was like, wait, are they like wearing uniforms? Is like the society divided into different categories, and according to which category you're in, you're wearing certain things? Is that a thing here? Because of course that sounds a lot like a dystopian society. So this is never specified. Maybe I'm just like reading stuff into like these little details that's not really there, but that's how I started to read it, because there are more things that kind of hint to me that this is a more dystopian society than we might think. The second thing that like started me off on that track is when we meet Josie's dad, there are references being made to him like being a fascist. He's living in some sort of like community, and they're saying that there's like danger coming, so they're stocking up on weapons, etc. And all of that sounds a lot like, wait, is this like a little side group of people, kind of like rebels, starting like wanting to bring on a revolution, wanting to fight like the government? Like, you know, it kind of had that connotation to it. And also at the end of the book, references are being made towards the fact that humans start to distrust AIs for being like too smart, etc. So that might also be like the starting point of a whole narrative about humans versus AIs, which is like, isn't that like the stereotypical or like the classic dystopian storyline? It's not part of this book, but that is being hinted at in general, I kind of read it as like a dystopian vibe, you know? Okay. Anything else I wanted to say? No, that's it about like the whole world setting. And then just a few more words on Klara herself. I found this like really, yeah, it is a bit of a tragic storyline, really. Of course, like Klara, this AI who is 100% devoted to her child, she's willing to sacrifice herself in order to help Josie get better. She's making these pleas towards her, well, yeah, entity, the thing she believes in, the son in this story. But like we have her devotedness on the one hand, but then at the same time, the whole story ends with Klara being left in a junkyard after Josie doesn't need her anymore, after getting better, after growing up, moving to college. Klara's no longer needed. And there's like a little time jump in the story, so we don't know exactly what happens. But like in the last part, Klara, I keep messing up the names, damn it. Klara is like, it's obviously a junkyard. It's never said it, it's junkyard, but she describes her surroundings and it's a junkyard, okay? So we can of course ask ourselves, how did she get there? Did she suffer from consequences or from side effects of her extracting some of that liquid from her brain, which she did in order to save Josie? did she suffer from side effects of that, which increased over time, so that at one point, also after Josie left, she was no longer able to function properly. So Josie's mom decided to bring her to the junkyard and just let her rust to death there. Or another possibility, as I think, is I think also like in the last part, Mr. Gabaldi, this one man, comes in and asks if he can use Klara to make like experiments on her to learn better about how AIs work. And like first, Josie's mother is against that. So like we are left to believe that that will not happen. But then again, there's this time jump, and then suddenly Klara, the fuck? Then suddenly Klara is like in a really bad damaged condition in that junkyard. So maybe she did consent to being like subjected to these experiments, and then maybe those took a toll on her and she broke down, and then she got like left at a junkyard. Maybe that's the reason. We don't really know. We don't really know the answers to any of those questions I just asked. These are just like some thoughts I had while reading this book, or like while finishing this book. It was a very interesting plotline. I would just like love to have more background information. As you can tell, I would love to have all those questions answered, but then again, I guess it's also just fun to think about them, never arriving at a like conclusion, because there's no correct answer, because well, the book ended without addressing any of them. But so I really enjoyed this book. I thought it raised a bunch of really interesting questions, and yeah, I can only recommend it to you. Go check it out. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.